Hello. All right. Today, I want to do a little bit of follow-up to a video I made some days ago, where President Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, mentioned that capitalism was not designed for Africa. Okay. So I want to do a little bit of follow-up. Okay. So let's go.
They were all distinguished in their own right. Helmut Schmidt, Pierre Trudeau, Jimmy Callahan, all of them. And I said to them, look, you people, you are not really thinking of us. And one of them said, hey, Olu, what do you mean by that? I said, look at everything in economic terms is weighted against us. And he said, Olu, you have to understand, we devise capitalism for ourselves, not for you.
Okay. That statement, we devise capitalism for us, not for you. Let me state this first. I disagree with that statement because no one sat down to devise or design capitalism. No one did it. In fact, all the characteristics of capitalism evolved through time for thousands of years. And in the last few centuries was the time when people actually now sat down to say, okay, this and this and this are working. Let's formulate an intellectual view of capitalism. That was from the writing of Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. That was 1776. He didn't design or devise capitalism. He was only talking about what people were doing. So nobody sat down to design capitalism and say, oh, let's use it for Europe alone, not for anybody else. Nobody ever did that. So I disagree with that statement. So I want to talk about the main characteristics of capitalism, the free market. When I read them out to you, you see that those things were the things that are our ancestors, and till today, people in your local village are doing. So all of us are using the same foundational principles that has helped Europe, America, so many countries around the world to build their economic base of their countries. So the question will now be, how come Africa is struggling with this? So let's go. Let's go and read some of the core principles of capitalism. Okay, let's see. Adam Smith is credited with formulating the theory of free market capitalism in the Wealth of Nations, like I said, 1776. But he did not create it in practice. Okay? He says the practice of markets and capitalism developed much earlier, evolved gradually. It evolved gradually. So the thing is this: the principles of capitalism evolve over time as people deal with other people. It's natural, it's organic. And I would say this now: I want people to look at things that work in society are the things that are organic, that are natural to people. Things that do not work are the things that people sat down to design. So let's look at this. It says the ancient and medieval roots. Okay, it's talking about Europe, but this, you can also look at this in your own local environment, your village, and the nearby towns, and ask yourself, what is different from this from your local area? Okay, ancient and medieval roots, markets, private property, and trade existed in ancient Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe, as well as ancient Africa and China and everywhere else. Okay, he said Mercantilist era, that's the 16th, 18th centuries. European nations encouraged trade and colonialism, but government heavily regulated commerce. The Dutch Republic in the 17th century, often considered the first society to practice something close to modern capitalism, with the world's first stock exchange. Yeah, that was in Amsterdam. It was created in 1602, and the Dutch East Indian Company, a joint stock company corporation. Okay, and then England, 18th century, the Industrial Revolution, private ownership and bilateral trade policy made Britain the first large-scale practitioner of capitalism. Let's look at some of the core principles of capitalism. 1. Private property rights. Individuals and businesses have the right to own and control assets, land, and resources. Isn't this what happens in your village? Does the town own your father's house? Does your village own or tell your father what crops to plant? No. So we all own our property. We do anything we want with them. So we have private property rights. If somebody goes to your house and takes something, goes to your farm and harvests your crops, you can take them to the local your king or chief. And they will honor your ownership of what that person stole. That's your private property rights being upheld. That is normal. 2. Voluntary exchange. Buyers and sellers freely engage in transactions without coercion, guided by mutual benefits. Isn't it when your local village, in your market, does anyone tell your mother or your father or anybody what to sell or how to sell? No. Competition. Multiple producers and sellers compete, which drives innovation, efficiency, and lower prices. My village, we sell gari in a local market. All the sellers make their gari, bring it to the market, and they decide based on what they want. They will decide how much to sell it. Of course, the price the neighbor sold, they look at it, they see that the gari is not as good as their own. So if the person sells for one particular amount of money, they will increase their own because they know their gari is better. Now, if the buyer says no, he can easily go to another seller and buy from them. That's competition. Number 4, profit motive. The pursuits of profit incentivize individuals and businesses to work, invest, and innovate. Isn't that what happened in your village? Okay. Number 5, consumer sovereignty. Consumers, through their choices, determine what goods and services are produced. The same thing. If somebody produces something and brings them to the market and nobody wants them, and they produce again next market day and bring them to the market and nobody buys them, what will happen? They will stop producing those things. Nobody will beat the sellers. You must buy from this. No. So what the buyers buy will determine what the sellers will produce. It's normal. It's organic. Nobody tells anybody what to produce. Limited government intervention. The state's role to enforce laws, protect property rights, and maintain order, not to control production and pricing. In any market in your locality, is the government controlling the price or what to produce? No. So the government only comes when somebody says, oh, this is my property, that person took it. You take that to the authorities who will now adjudicate and settle the matter. Okay? Now, rule of law. Contracts and agreements are enforced fairly, ensuring trust in the market. That's the same thing that is related to the first one I just talked about. Okay? 8, supply and demand. Prices are determined by the interaction of supply and demand, allocating resources efficiently. That's what the market does. 9, capital accumulation and investment. Savings and reinvestment of profits drive economic growth and productivity. And 10, innovation and entrepreneurship. Individuals are free to create, experiment, and build new businesses and industries. Now, these are the main characteristics of the free market capitalism. Is anything here strange to you or people around you? Did anybody devise these things? No. It started organically. This is the basis of the free market capitalism. The only thing that Europe and America did very well in the last 2 centuries was that they took these principles, they took what was already working, and they scaled it up. Once the state was solid, they scaled it up. We in Africa, we were not states. Yes, we had empires, but the majority of Africa was small villages and towns. And because of what happened to us, colonialism, when we got independence, many of our leaders who got us independence made the mistake, yes, I say that, made the mistake to say, oh, because Europe colonized us, we won't do the things they do. That was a big mistake. Instead of learning how they scaled the natural way of trading, which everyone in Africa was doing, have been doing for millennia, many of our country's leaders decided to go socialism. And socialism, unlike capitalism, was designed. And the truth of the matter is this: the principles of socialism runs counter to what is natural. And that's why they don't work. Think about this and put your comments to tell me if you think what I just said doesn't make any sense. Or if you agree with me, also put your comments, all right? Like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel, all right? Take care.